people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. 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 That's the bad guy.
De la noche, Stephanie Piñeiro.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. As it pertains to tomorrow's welterweight contest between Stephanie Piñeiro and Diana Tapia, there appears to be a version of the WBO title and the WBA title on the line. The WBO International and the WBA Continental. The WBO title puts her on the path of her matchroom stablemate, Sandy Ryan, and the WBA puts her on the path of newly crowned WBA champion Lauren Price, who's over there on the Boxer and Sky Sports side of things. Potential Lauren Price fight could be difficult to negotiate because I don't think for a second Ben Shalom is going to ship her off to Matchroom and DAZN. Thus, Stephanie would have to be the one that crosses over. She'd have to be the one that travels. The fight would presumably take place in the United Kingdom. It's a fight that we talked about. That potentiality. Lauren Price's athleticism, agility, and speed, hand speed, foot speed, it makes her a handful for anybody at or around these weights, Stephanie Piñeiro included. Believe it or not, even though Sandy Ryan is a more experienced fighter and a more experienced champion than Lauren Price, stylistically, just based on styles, that's a more winnable fight for Stephanie Piñeiro. I know that Sandy Ryan has a better resume than Lauren Price by and large. She's been in there with Jessica McCaskill, a common opponent between them, but she's also been in there with Marie-Pierre Huel. She's also been in there with Terry Harper, former champion Erica Farias. She's got a better resume than Lauren Price. She's got a better resume so far, but styles, as they say, styles make fights. And stylistically, Sandy Ryan's style plays right into the hands of Stephanie Piñeiro because Sandy Ryan, at her very best, is a very aggressive mid-range to inside combination puncher. She almost mirrors a pressure fighter sometimes. I wouldn't call her a pressure fighter outright, because I know she's more versatile than that. She is. But when Sandy Ryan is having it all her way, sometimes that's what she looks like. Pressure fighter. Sandy caught wind that the winner of this weekend's fight may end up being her mandatory challenger, and to that she said, interesting. I'll tune in to watch. So because I anticipate that Stephanie's going to win a points decision this weekend, that does line her up for Sandy Ryan. How would that fight play out? What would it look like? Well, like I said, at her very best, Sandy is a very statuesque, aggressive, mid-range to inside fighter, but Stephanie's statuesque too. She's got reach like Sandy's got reach. She's got pop how Sandy's got pop. The difference. Stephanie is more of a boxer, where Sandy is more of a puncher. They've both got height, they've both got length, they've both got pop. What separates them is Stephanie is more of a boxer and Sandy is more of a puncher. This weekend's fight is a good rehearsal, a good warm-up fight for Stephanie Piñeiro if she should face Sandy Ryan immediately after. This is good experience. Now, obviously, I think that Sandy Ryan is a better, more educated fighter than Diana Tapia. She is, but Sandy, like Diana, she's got a mean streak. Sandy, like Diana, she's aggressive. So this is good preparation for Stephanie, that she's facing a fighter of similar physical dimensions that's very aggressive, because that's what she would face in Sandy Ryan. Sandy's an orthodox fighter, whereas Stephanie is a southpaw. Sandy comes forward quite a bit, whereas Stephanie likes to hang back, move lateral, use the ring, set up counters, set traps. While she's not as experienced as Sandy, Sandy's fought better fighters than Stephanie has. She's more experienced than Stephanie. This weekend's fight is good experience for Stephanie to deal with an aggressive, come-forward opponent that's going to try to crowd you and overwhelm you with volume and power. It's good experience.
It's a good fight.
Afterwards, Ryan versus Piñeiro has all the makings of a good fight. When they initially announced that they signed Stephanie Piñeiro, I didn't think it was to put her in the ring with Sandy Ryan.
But they must want to if she's fighting for a version of a WBO title.
I'm not against it. I just figured that they used Stephanie to collect some of the other titles at this weight. That why just have one prized stallion at welterweight when you can have two? And if they clean out the division amongst themselves, they can then face each other afterwards. If we get this fight sooner than later, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying I didn't think that's what they wanted, not at first.
Fuck it.
Roll on Ryan versus Piñeiro.
Fuck you, Matias. Fuck Matias. Don't talk all that shit. You gotta fight tomorrow. Go out there, win, do your thing. You talking all that shit. Don't go losing, because I'm coming after you. Fuck Matias.
Earlier this week, I saw that Regis Prograis had a passing interest in facing Jack Catterall. But with Jack Catterall negotiating a fight with Golden Boy Promotions as Arnold Barboza, that doesn't look to be happening next. Thus, Regis Prograis has decided to reshift his focus back over to Subriel Matias, when they were both champions, when Regis had the WBC and Subriel had the IBF.
He still has it.
Unless Liam Paro takes it from him this weekend, I don't think he's going to. I think Subriel's going to do to him what he did to the last couple of unbeaten fighters that he fought better still.
Regis wants to fight him now.
I'm not against it. Very recently, Subriel Matias had a few choice words for his contemporaries at this weight. Regis Prograis among them said some not so nice things. Regis has caught wind, and he doesn't like it. He wants to fight him afterwards. That if he stays IBF champion beyond this weekend's fight, they can settle up with each other. What do I think about that?
3-star fight.
You think this is a 3-star fight given how Regis looked with Devin?
I do. Because styles make fights. Say it all the time. Stylistically, Devin's style was all wrong for Regis Prograis, an economic counterpuncher that waits for the opportunity to land a bomb. You won't get that opportunity with a pure boxer, but with a pressure guy,
You might.
you might get that opportunity to catch him in between the punches because a pressure guy throws more of them.
I know that a lot of people saw how Regis looked with Danielito Zorrilla and how he looked with Devin Haney, and they arrived at the conclusion that Regis is in decline, that he's starting to slow down and his age is catching up to him. But I don't know that I completely agree with that, because what I think is, stylistically, those were bad style matchups.
That's why he looked bad.
But against a more aggressive fighter, who he doesn't have to chase, who he can walk into hard punches,
Might be different.
power is the last thing to go. That's what they say. And Regis Prograis has long been one of the more powerful punchers at this weight.
I wonder how Subriel Matias would take a clean shot from Regis Prograis.
It's a different fight than the last two fights. Matias isn't going to run from him. He's going to run to him. He's a pressure fighter. That's what he does. So if he gets caught,
And there's a chance that he might.
how well does he take it? How well would he take a clean shot from Regis Prograis? You think I'm cutting him slack for the sake of cutting him slack, and I'm not. It's not a coincidence that in his last two fights, he was in there with two guys who wanted to keep him at arm's length. They wanted to stay on the outside of him, and they were both very economic. That's a stylistic nightmare for a counterpuncher like Regis Prograis.
But against a guy he doesn't have to chase around the ring, a guy who's going to come to him, he might look better.
I didn't rush to the conclusion, rush to the assumption that Father Time has caught up to Regis Prograis. What that might have been was two very bad stylistic matchups for a counterpuncher. And I feel like this fight, better than those fights, will tell the story. Because if Regis can't win this one,
He's got the edge.
he's got the right style for the job. So in spite of that tactical advantage, if you can't handle this guy, if you can't take care of him, then I'll say, yeah, Father Time has finally caught up to this guy. Because this is supposed to be a fight you can win.
Supposed to be able to beat a pressure fighter.
The caveat is, Regis hasn't fought since that loss to Devin Haney. He hasn't rebounded off that yet. That loss late last year in December, and we're 6 months into this one.
Is Matchroom going to give him a rebound fight?
I believe it was a 3-fight deal that he signed with Matchroom when he jumped into bed with them. And the first fight was the Danielito Zorrilla fight. The second fight was the Devin Haney fight. His next fight would be presumably the final fight of that 3-fight deal. So what does he do? Does he take in a rebound fight? or does he shoot for Subriel Matias straight away? And if he does, how long is that going to take? Because Subriel's fighting this weekend.
When can they get him back out?
How soon can they get him back out? And that's assuming he actually stays IBF champion. I think he's going to, but I said it in my previous videos. These homecoming fights have a way of going sideways. How it went sideways for Jarrett Hurd in Maryland, how it went sideways for Julian Williams in Philadelphia, Giovanni Santiago in San Diego,
Katie Taylor in Ireland,
unofficially Josh Taylor in Scotland. The first time he fought Jack Catterall, let's be honest, we all know Josh lost that fight.
those were all homecoming fights.
This weekend, Subriel Matias is having his homecoming fight. He's got to keep his eyes on the ball. This is a two-pronged process. You take care of business this weekend. You stay IBF champion. That's the first prong. And the second prong is you face Regis Prograis.
Now, I've already made my pick. I have Subriel winning this weekend.
But I could be wrong. For this conversation to stay alive, Subriel's got to stay IBF champion.
I feel like my prediction for this fight, and I've trained extremely hard for this, and I'm 100% ready. It's my light heavyweight debut. I'm very excited for this, but I think I'm gonna go in there. I'm gonna knock out Alexander Gvozdyk. I know his strengths, I know his weaknesses, and we have a really good game plan in store for him. So we're gonna go in there, we're gonna knock him out.
Can David Benavidez knock out Alexander Gvozdyk?
Yeah.
Really not sure. Said the same thing before he fought Caleb Plant. He didn't knock him out. All his fans can do is make excuses about Kenny Bayless. Kenny Bayless not warning
The holding.
Caleb Plant about the holding, the excessive holding. What the fuck does that have to do with David's ability to break the clinch and put some punches in there?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Caleb Plant ran out of gas, and he was running on fumes for the last 4 rounds of that fight. In spite of that, David couldn't knock him
I don't
out.
fucking want to hear about Kenny Bayless.
You've got a guy who's exhausted for the last 4 rounds of the fight. A guy you're bigger than, a guy you're supposed to be stronger than, you're younger than.
Don't talk to me about Kenny Bayless.
Kenny Bayless is the reason that David Benavidez can't break a clinch to put some punches in there and take the guy out. Bullshit.
You're just parakeeting shit you hear other people say.
You couldn't knock out a Caleb Plant who was running on fumes for 4 rounds, and based on that, I don't know if you can knock out Gvozdyk, because he's bigger than Caleb, stronger than Caleb.
Comes from a great amateur background, 250 amateur fights, a former world champion.
Look at that pivot and how he puts that uppercut in there.
Tries for the right hand, gets under the right hand.
This is a naturally bigger guy than anybody David's ever fought, and for me and my money, a better boxer by and large, and a bigger puncher than anybody David's ever fought.
Everybody David's ever fought.
Been following this channel long enough, you'll know that I'm not a big believer in David's boxing.
In terms of boxing, he's just a very simple fighter.
Has been. Look at how he marches forward, winging that massive left hook. Yeah, maybe Caleb Plant couldn't have countered that because he didn't have the size to do it.
The power.
But this is not Caleb Plant you're fighting this weekend, and this was a gassed out, exhausted Caleb Plant that was spent.
He's all out of gas.
David couldn't knock him out, but he says he's gonna knock out Gvozdyk. I happen to come across Teddy Atlas's prediction for the fight. Teddy Atlas,
I don't always agree with Teddy, but he raised some valid points.
what makes them valid is he actually likes David Benavidez. Where I'm critical of that fighter, he's not.
He likes him.
But he said David Benavidez is going to go up to light heavyweight and take on a guy who's only ever lost to Beterbiev, who he was beating until he ran out of gas late in the fight. He won't run out of gas. He's had a few years to think about it, to form a certain resolve in him, he said. And while Atlas is going with Gvozdyk, he has nothing but respect for Benavidez. I love Benavidez. He comes from boxing bloodlines. He behaves like a fighter. He is a fighter to the core. He faces everyone in front of him. He believes in himself. In the sport, he's a guy that fights a pleasing style, a physical style. He blends it with technique.
And that's where we disagree.
That's where I disagree with Teddy, because what I think David has been doing is largely benefiting from a noticeable height advantage, reach advantage, and weight advantage.
But Teddy likes his technique.
Teddy Atlas, who said that maybe Benavidez isn't aware or cares of the challenge that he has in front of him, and while Benavidez has an admirable fighter's attitude, it won't rattle Gvozdyk. I don't know that Benavidez is even aware, or if he even cares, of the risk he is taking. He's going in there with a guy who will give him fits, counterpunch him, counter-to-counterpunch him, a guy who can use his legs to get angles and set traps. Gvozdyk isn't just a guy who has a good technique. He is a guy with mental toughness. People might not realize just how mentally tough and strong Gvozdyk is.
So here's an example.
A lot of people wouldn't admit that someone got the better of them in sparring, but Gvozdyk did about 2 days ago.
Yes. What was that back then? How long ago? What was the detail?
It was a long time ago, maybe 7 years ago, and yeah, he was dominating his part, you know. I have no excuses, yeah, he was better.
You said he dominated?
Yeah, he dominated.
Why was he able to? You were more maybe in your prime.
Listen, I don't like making any excuses. For my opinion, I came out of from Ukraine, jet lag, you know, not ready. He was in the middle of camp. But all of this is just abortion excuses, you know. Now I believe I'm in a better shape.
Mental toughness. This is an example of that. Most people wouldn't admit that someone got the better of them in sparring, but Alexander Gvozdyk did.
Because it doesn't bother him.
And why would it? Sparring isn't fighting, and I think boxing fans struggle with that. They struggle to understand that, and we're talking about a sparring session from about 7 years ago.
When Teddy Atlas says that people don't realize how mentally tough Alexander Gvozdyk is, I feel like this is an example of that, because most people wouldn't admit that someone got the better of them in sparring, but Gvozdyk did. Rolls right off his shoulder.
He doesn't care.
He didn't deny it.
Because in his mind, it doesn't matter. That was a long time ago. The circumstances were different. It's not a fight. Mentally tough. Just like Teddy Atlas is talking about.
And Teddy would know because he used to train him.
Wondering if Atlas just has a soft spot for his former fighter. It doesn't sound like it. That's not how Atlas operates. He's speaking from his head, not his heart. Gvozdyk is too fast and too smart. He's elusive and he will counter the heck out of him, said Atlas. He'll pick him apart, then back him up late. People will be shocked, he continued. I like Benavidez. I like what he represents. I like the way he fights, the way he behaves. He's not afraid to put it on the line against anybody. I love that, said Atlas. But I think he gets beat by Gvozdyk.
Here's what I see.
David Benavidez won't have a size advantage over this fighter the way he's had a size advantage over most, if not all, fighters that he's fought. There's that to consider.
What it reminds me of is how very recently Emmanuel Navarrete moved up in weight to take on a Ukrainian fighter in Denis Berinchyk.
Like how David Benavidez is moving up in weight to take on a Ukrainian fighter in Gvozdyk. You know that Gvozdyk and Denis Berinchyk, Vasyl Lomachenko, Alexander Usyk, you know that they were all on the same amateur team. You know that 3 out of those 4 guys are champions right now.
Are you aware?
Were you aware of that? And that all it would take for Alexander Gvozdyk to complete the set is to win this weekend.
In case you haven't noticed, these Ukrainian fighters have been on a roll.
They're hot right now, and they're coming out swinging. If David Benavidez comes out swinging, like he did with Caleb Plant, like he did with Demetrius Andrade, those are naturally smaller fighters, lighter punchers.
You might have wore them out.
And wore them down. But that could be because they can't land with the same authority that a full-fledged light heavyweight can. They don't have that same size, that same power.
That variety of punches, mid-range to inside, and still able to move and punch from the outside, because Gvozdyk, unlike them, he's got the height, the length, and the mobility to do it.
I almost don't want to make a pick. I want to take a wait-and-see approach, but what's the fun in that?
We're going with Gvozdyk.
I've never picked against David Benavidez in any fight that he's had so far. This is his chance to make me a believer, more of one. If he's going to prove me wrong, prove me wrong.
Let's see it.
Because what I'm seeing is not only is this guy bigger than you're used to, bigger than the guys that you fight with a bigger punch, but he's a better boxer than they are as well.
Navarrete versus Berinchyk 2.0.
The only reason I think David Benavidez is fighting this guy is because he sparred him before 7 years ago, and he had a good session. Because here today, Gvozdyk is 37.
That's it.
But I think they've miscalculated. He's had 3 warm-up fights in the last 12 months. There's no ring rust to shake off.
I think Team Benavidez made a mistake.
Gone with Gvozdyk.